So hello from Green-Mopeds in London. Today we are trying something a little bit different, which is a three-wheeler from a company in Japan called Aidea. That's AIDEA. It is a last mile bike, essentially. It has two wheels at the back. They are 1 kilowatt each. So one wheel at the front. It's got a tilt mechanism so that you can, lean into corners and stuff, which is actually, you can turn that on and off by pulling this lever here. I wouldn't recommend turning it on, to be frank, turning the tilt system off, as in keeping the bike upright, especially going around corners. I'm not sure that would be a good idea. As you can see, it's got a roof, it's got wipers. It's a category called L2E. L2E are for three-wheelers, and that means that, but you can still ride it on an AM license. Okay, so that's what's making it good for delivery. Okay, so AM or P, if you have that on your license, you can ride this bike because it goes, there's a 28 mile an hour version of it. It takes a bit of getting used to, this three wheels with the tilt system, I have to say. And as I said, it's out of Japan, so obviously we all know how good Japan are at making products, so that sort of says everything you need to know, really. So 2 kilowatts, 1 kilowatt each, which some might say is a little bit low on power. 1 kilowatt is about 1.5 horsepower, so this has got 3 horsepower across 2 driven wheels. Okay, you're sitting on top of one battery by default, but you can have a second battery. The second battery currently is being carried. So we talked about this before on other bikes, that some bikes, you're actually using up both batteries at the same time, whereas some other bikes, you essentially swap. You're carrying the second battery just in case you run out of range, essentially. This currently is in that mode, as in if you take the second battery, you're sort of carrying it. But apparently there are ideas around making it just, a single view of the battery as far as the bike's concerned. Okay. One battery will get you probably about 30-35 mile range. So obviously 2 batteries should be enough for a shift, especially if you have a return to base sort of setup where you're going back to pick up things for delivery or last mile or something like that. Then you could quite easily have another battery waiting, being charged up, and it literally, you open the side panel and you just pull them out and swap them over. The key thing about this bike, though, I guess, is, and this is a smaller one, there are others that we're looking at as well. This one is still only 2 meters long, so that's basically about the same length as a Super Socko CPX. Okay, so it's not sitting there thinking, okay, I've got to get used to driving around a 3 meter long or anything like that. It's still the same length as a sort of traditional motorbike. But because of the rear platform, you can have different sort of boxes put on it, like chilled boxes and split zone delivery boxes and all that sort of stuff. And it can carry 100 kilos on the back. Okay, so if you're thinking about, oh look, there's a Getia CPX. That's exactly the sort of thing that we're talking about. Putting 100 kilos on the back in a sort of twin-zoned delivery box that can be chilled in its own right. So for chilled food, I guess, for example, the Getir people who are using a CPX, they don't have chilled top boxes. They look fairly standard, but this one is sort of set up. It's just a flat platform that you get on the back, and then you essentially choose your cargo box that you want on it. So while we're stationary, so here's the sort of layout of the dash. So that's the name, AIDEA, Aidea. Okay, so it's telling you range, so that's in kilometers at the moment. This is with one battery. So it's a good indicator of battery. We've been saying before that you have some of these displays that show you things that essentially don't help, like amps and volts and things like that. What you actually want to know is exactly what this is telling you. You've got 68 kilometers of mile left, and you've got 85% battery. That's fine. That's essentially what you need to know. Then it's got your speed. Obviously, this will be converted into miles an hour at some point. And then around the dash itself, you've got a USB port, as you would expect. You've also got a charging port. So here, if you look underneath the steering wheel, so here, this is where you charge. So you plug in, and then it goes to a 13 amp at the other end of the cable. Okay, so that's how you charge it. It's got a reverse gear, which is down here. Obviously, for the heavier bikes, although we've sort of poo-pooed it in the past with just pure motorbikes, for a bike like this, if you've got 100 kilos hanging off the back, reverse gear might be something that's a bit more usable. Here you've got your USB port, and then standard stuff, lights and kill switch, what have you. There are no modes on this bike. It's just one mode, which will get you whichever version you have, either 28 miles an hour or higher. Okay, so I'm 6'1", and I'm wearing a helmet. So technically speaking, this is a bike that you have to wear a helmet with. So it's just a three-wheel version of a motorbike. So just because it's got a roof and a washer doesn't mean to say that you don't have to wear a helmet. There could be a version of this bike that has seatbelts, and then you could get away without a helmet. That would be like the Yamaha C1, I think they called it, where it had a helmet and this sort of layout. But because it had a seat belt, you didn't have to wear a helmet and all that other stuff. But this is a motorbike in all senses, really. License, insurance, etc., etc. Just because it's running off electric, you'll be surprised how many people think that because it's not running off petrol, it doesn't then need the licenses and all that stuff. But yes, it certainly does. I'm fairly upright in this position. It's not an adjustable seat, so this is the position you've got. They've thought about the height of the legs to the handlebars, so that's good. There's no adjustment in the seat. I guess you get used to that because you've got something behind you. There is a rear to this seat, unlike any other motorbike. This is more like sitting in a chair. As you can see, you can just lean it just as you go into corners, or if you pull that down, that will turn that off. Okay, which, as I said, you probably don't want to do. It's being looked at for the grant. The current state of play is that sort of work in progress. L2 e-bikes are something that need to be debated with OZEV about whether you can actually get this on the grant. But in terms of what it's meant to do, give you a platform, and we'll do a static review of this bike. So to have a platform where you can mix and match what you carry on it, and be protected from the elements a little bit, do enough range for you to do a long shift, 60 to 70 miles of delivery or what have you. This will tick all the boxes. Pricing is to be determined, but it's probably going to be less than £10,000, which, bearing in mind it's got two motors and two batteries, that's still fairly reasonable. An alternative to that would be something like a three-wheel EC City, which that is over 10. well over 10, to be honest. So it's not going to be too far out there, and that's after the grant, by the way, the EC City three-wheeler. So that is being finalised as well. But in terms of riding it, it is something that you need to try with two wheels at the back. There are bikes like the Peugeot MP3, which are three wheels already, but that's two wheels at the front. Whereas this one, you know, you're being pushed along by two motors, and it does take a bit of getting used to. But once you are used to it with the tilting, and you sort of, I guess, have the courage to let it do what it's supposed to do, as in lean, then you should be fine with it. Okay, so we're just going to give it a little spurt up, sort of side part of the A3. So see how that goes. Hopefully. Okay, so let's just so most of these bikes, of course, they're going to be, well, around here, around London. You're going to be in 20-mile zones, 30-mile zones, so you won't ever really be able to go above that. And a lot of the delivery companies are taking these as 28 mile an hour, 50cc equivalents, simply because there's no real opportunity, and they don't want their riders essentially hurtling around at 50 and a 30 and getting tickets and all that sort of stuff. So as you can see, it cruises along perfectly fine. No, it's stable considering I'm not used to it. Obviously with the roof and the windscreen, there's no real wind effect, which you know, if you want a good example of what having a screen does for you, then this is sort of it. You know, I was talking normally all the time I've been riding it, because there's all of the buffeting that you normally get out of riding these bikes has been taken away. Just let's let this car go past. As you can see, it picks up well as well, even though, I mean, when they first said it's just 2 kilowatts, I thought, will that be enough for it to perform? But yeah, again, I guess this shows what happens when you tie it up to a certain controller or a certain battery. Okay, so as you can see, it's pretty nippy for 2 kilowatts. Here's another Getir bike, Super Socco. Wondering what we are. So this bike is currently being looked into in terms of getting it over here, getting it through all the processes on the grant, on the insurance database and all that sort of stuff. But if you, I mean, I guess you have two choices. If you go down the moped route, you've got possibly less carrying capacity. Obviously some of these bikes now are coming out with potentially large top boxes. Silence do one of 300 litres, but eventually you're going to be stuck with a weight limit. So having the extra wheel on the back is something that help you get away from that problem. The alternative, of course, is pedelecs. But if you try and put 100 kilos on the back of a pedelec, eventually with those tiny little push bike tyres on it, it's just not going to be able to handle it. Okay, and also with a pedelec, you won't be getting, 3,000 watt hours of battery and all this sort of stuff. So there is a point where you have to start thinking, well, I need something that's still sort of motorbike-like to still be able to cut through the traffic, still has a low license requirement, and this might very well be that sort of bike. Okay, so hopefully that's given you a bit of a taster. We'll do a static review when we get a chance, and if you have any questions, please feel free to contact us, and thanks very much.